A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Strategic Management class. So last week we happened to complete Unit 1. So now we are going to enter into the second unit. So in Unit 1 we have seen what is the strategy, what is strategic management, the need and necessity, and the process of strategic management, the four stages: strategic intent, strategy formulation, strategy implementation, strategy evaluation and control. And in the strategic intent, we discuss the components of strategic intent regarding the vision, mission, objectives, goals, and we have also seen that seen factors that shape in strategy. And similarly, we also discussed regarding how to craft a strategy. Now, in today's class, we shall move on to the second unit, which focuses on strategy formulation. So before we start off with this strategy formulation, prior to strategy formulation, the first stage in strategy formulation happens to be our environmental scanning. Similarly, in our syllabus also, the next topic that we have in our syllabus is environmental scanning. So now in today's class, let us see what is meant by environmental scanning and why we need this particular environmental scanning. Environmental scanning, it's a process of gathering information about events and their relationship within the organization's internal environment and external environment. And the basic purpose of environmental scanning is to help management determine the future direction of the organization. So what environmental scanning, what are we searching for? We are trying to examine, by scanning, we are trying to examine two aspects: internal environment and external environment. Internal environment within the organization, we are trying to examine. Similarly, outside the organization also, we are trying to examine. Within the organization, we are going to look what are our core competencies, what are our capabilities, what are our strengths. Similarly, what are those particular areas where we are weak? And outside the environment, outside the organization, what are the threats that are happening, that are we are facing? The changes happening in the customers, the changes happening in market dynamics, changes happening in terms of technology. So how these particular changes now present an organization? Some of these particular changes may be a threat, some of them might be an opportunity. So this is what an environmental scanning does. Okay. So the most widely accepted method for categorizing different norms of environmental scanning, it divides this particular scanning into three types: irregular scanning, regular scanning, and continuous scanning. So when we look at this particular irregular scanning, this consists of largely ad hoc environmental studies. Now, ad hoc means with something that is reactive. Whenever you face any situation, a crisis or a problem. So when an organization faces any crisis or a problem, in order to encounter that particular crisis or problem, they look for certain studies how to overcome this particular crisis. So that sort of scanning we say as irregular scanning, right? So here irregular scanning is like reactionary message. This irregular scanning is like, reactionary action. Okay. So whenever anything happens, then we look into the environment, external environment, as well as the internal environment, and how we can overcome that particular crisis using our strengths, using our capabilities, using the organizational resources. So how we can overcome that particular crisis, that's what we are going to look into. Similarly, the other type of environmental scanning is regular scanning, right? This is a continuous process. Regular scanning is in regularly, which is, at periodic intervals. Okay, regular scanning happens at periodic intervals, right? From time to time, right? It might be for every 6 months, or it might be for every 3 months. Generally, for 6 months, that's what they do, or else every year, annually. Most of the organizations do environmental scanning annually, and in some cases, once in 2 years or once in 3 years, like that, right? So that particular scanning that is being done at periodic intervals, right? So this particular one is called as a regular scanning. Now, finally, the last type of scanning is our continuous scanning. So here, day in and day out, organization happens to monitor the environment, right? Monitor internal environment as well as monitor the external environment. Okay, so that we know that we say as continuous scanning system. Okay. So these are the three types of scannings that are employed by an organization to identify the changes happening in the external environment and at the same time to introspect or take stock of situations happening within the organization. Now this is the process. Now this particular diagram clearly depicts how environmental scanning happens in the organization. So this is the input that we are talking about here are the changes that are taking place, right? Now for this particular changes that are taking place, based on this particular changes, we also look into our internal factors. Now, are we in a position to encounter these particular changes that are happening, or are we not? And based on this particular internal factors that we have within the organization, now we prepare certain strategies. Okay, we scan certain strategies among the available courses of action. Here, strategies are nothing but the courses of action. So we come out with certain alternative courses of action, and then we see how which of these particular alternative courses of action best fits as a reply to the changes that are happening. All right. Now that particular course of action or that particular strategy which can help an organization to tide over this particular crisis. Now that's what we are going to look. What we are going to see in this particular environmental change. And finally, we once we decide upon that, then we move on to the strategic change. Okay, then we move to this particular strategic change. So this is how this particular environmental scanning happens. Now, what is the purpose? Now, why do we need to do this particular scanning? The primary purpose or the basic purpose of doing environmental scanning is to identify opportunities and threats. That is the basic purpose. And to match this particular opportunities and threats with the strengths, capabilities, resources that we have got, and the ways to overcome the weaknesses within the organization. Now, let us look at the important factors. Now, those particular factors that are important for environmental scanning. So, before scanning an environment, an organization must take the following factors into consideration. So one particular factor, the first factor that we have got is events. Now what are events? Events are specific occurrences which take place in different environmental sectors of a business. In the same business, now specific occurrences which take place. Right now, these are important for the functioning and success of the business. Events can occur either in internal or in external. Right, organization should observe these particular events and organization should track them. Okay, so that's what is this particular event. Okay, so events are specific occurrences. Right now, those particular specific occurrences is what we call as events. Okay. Now similarly, there's something called as trends. As the very name suggests, trends are general courses of action or tendencies along which the events occur. They are a group of similar or related events which tend to move in a specific direction. Further, trends can be either positive or they can be negative. Now, by observing trends, an organization can identify any change in the strength or frequency of the event, suggesting a change in the respective area. Right. So here, when we mean what we mean by this particular trends is for certain issues or certain things, certain events, they occur at regular intervals, or some events occur again and again. Now, such thing is called as a trend. Okay, so when we are facing a national calamity, what is this particular trend? The trend is economies dip. So economies move into this particular move towards the direction of the recession. So we find depression, right? So we find this particular economic growth going down. whenever we face a national calamity. Now that we are having a pandemic which is spread across the world, all over the world we have pandemic. So that what is the trend? Now we have very recently, 2 or 3 days back, now economic growth rates of many countries have been released. And when the economic growth rates of many countries have been released, what trend did we find? All these particular countries, economic growth is in negative. The first quarter, right now, this particular GDP figures are for Q1. So the Q1 GDP figures for all the countries are in negative, excepting for China. China is the only country among all the developed countries and developing countries which had a positive GDP Q1 growth rate, quarter one growth rate. Right. In India, we had minus 23.9. That's like almost 24%. Minus 24% is this particular GDP that we had. The last time we had such a negative GDP growth in a quarter was 20 years back. Okay, so almost near 2000 that time. That was the last time we had such a growth, such a lowest GDP growth rate in the first quarter. Now, when we look at the other developing countries also, a developed nation like United Kingdom, GDP growth rate was 23.2. We are 23.9, they are 23.2. There are other countries like that. So when we look at the scenario, whenever a pandemic or national calamity, something like that occurs, there's a trend, there's this particular trend that is happening. And these particular trends repeat sometimes. So some of these trends can be positive. Now some of these particular trends can be negative also. Now similarly, we have certain issues taking place. So with the help of environmental scanning, we also look into certain issues. Now what is this particular issue? In wake of events and trends, some concerns can arise. These are issues. Organizations try to identify emerging issues so that they can take corrective actions to nip them in the bud. However, identifying emerging issues is a difficult task. Usually, emerging issues start with a shift in values or change in which the concern is viewed. Okay. So, after events and trends, we also have certain issues happening, right? Okay, issue is a concern. Now, something to worry about. Okay, so these particular things they happen all the time. Okay? So, whenever we have any crisis, an issue happens. When it happens, if we are not able to face it, the organization is not prepared to face the crisis, issue take place. If the organization is in a position to face the crisis, they can overcome this particular issue. Next is our expectation. Okay, some interested groups have demands based on their concern for issues, and these demands are expectations. Similarly, certain people they also have this particular, expectations. So these are some of the important factors for our environmental scanning. Now, moving further, the next topic in our syllabus is industry and competitive analysis. So initially, let us look at the industry analysis. Now, before we look into this particular industry analysis, let us try to understand what is meant by an industry. What do we mean by an industry? So when you look at the first sentence, the definition is very clear. Industry is a group of firms producing a similar or an identical product or service. Right? In simple language, for a common man, in common man's language, group of organizations producing same product or group of organizations producing a same service is called as an industry. For example, we have cement industry. All those manufacturing organizations which are producing cement, We club them together and call them as cement industry. Similarly, we have consumer durable industry. All right. Now, what is this consumer durable industry? All those manufacturing organizations which are producing white goods. All right. Now, it is also called as consumer durable is also called as a white good industry. So, what is a white good? Air conditioner, refrigerator, television, micro oven. Now, these particular products are clubbed together and called as white goods. Okay, so that is again an industry. And the attractiveness of an industry in which a firm chooses to do business and its relative competitive position within that industry affects the strategies and objectives of the firm. Okay. So this is what we'll have to understand. Okay. How, I mean, the attractiveness of the industry where an organization has decided to do the business, and similarly, what is the competitive position in that particular industry, these things they affect which particular objectives we formulate. Similarly, these affect which particular strategies we are formulating, right? So these particular things they're going to have impact on this particular thing. Similarly, in order to be successful, a company must either match its strategy to the industry environment in which it operates, or be able to reshape the industry environment to its advantage through its business strategy. So, in order to be successful, what a company needs to do, it has to match its strategy to the industry environment. If it is able to match its strategy to the industry environment, then we don't have any problem. Or else, what it should be doing, it should reshape the industry environment. Right? Reshape the industry environment to its advantage through its chosen strategy. The second thing can happen for those organizations which are market leaders and which are very powerful in terms of the resources, in terms of the human resource, in terms of the financial resources, in terms of the physical resources. Those giant organizations or powerful corporate organizations like Ambani's businesses, right? Like Reliance Industries, Reliance businesses, or Adani businesses. Now, these people like Adani and Ambani, now they will be able to reshape the industry environment through industrial environment through their strategy. I mean, the way they would like to do business, they would like to change the rules and regulations of that particular industry, or make certain major changes in that particular industry, which may suit their needs or which may suit their chosen strategy. So that happens. For the normal players in the industry, people or organizations or business people or business organizations which are not that powerful in terms of the financial or human or physical resources, they generally what they do is they try to match their strategy to the industry environment. Now, bottom line is companies typically fail when the strategy no longer fits the environment in which they operate. So now this is the loophole, or this is the bottleneck for both the market leader or market challenger and as well as the marginal players in the industry. Right. So what is the bottleneck or what is the loophole here? When organizations are unable to frame a strategy which will suit the environment. Now that is the biggest challenge over there. Now with this particular backdrop, now let us look at the diagram that you find on your screen. Diagram on industry analysis. Right. So there are five major things that happen to influence our industry analysis, or an organization when it does an industry analysis, it takes five parameters, right? It takes this particular five parameters and then it studies this particular five parameters. Based on that, it takes a decision whether to enter or not to enter, or if it is already existing in that particular industry, whether to expand or not to expand, whether to go for a merger and acquisition or not to go for a merger and acquisition, whether to invest or whether to divest. Anything. It can be an investment or it can be a divestment also. So those particular crucial or key decisions are taken by considering this particular parameters in industry analysis. So the first parameter that we have got here is industry setting. The second one is industry structure. The third one is industry attractiveness. The fourth one is industry performance. And the last one is industry practices. So now let us look at each of these particular parameters and how these particular parameters help an organization to analyze an industry. So coming to the first one, the first parameter that we have got is industry setting. So in industry setting, we again have industry setting. The sub issues or the sub points in industry setting are fragmented industry, emerging industry, similarly transition industry, declining industry, and finally global industry, right? So first we have to understand what is the industry setting. What is the setting of the industry? Is it a fragmented? Is it an industry under transition? Or is it a global? Let us look at each one of them. Now, what do we mean by fragmented industries? Those particular industries which are not universal in nature, right? Or what we mean by industry, group of organizations manufacturing a similar product is called as industry. So those particular products which do not have universal appeal, so they are confined to one particular season or they are confined to one particular region. Now such industries are called as fragmented industries. For example, toys industry. Around Andhra Pradesh, we don't sell toys. The best toys are made in Kondapalli. So Kondapalli is known for toys. Kondapalli toys are known all over the world also. That is confined only to one particular. Similarly, we have this particular, a unique set of sarees, which ladies and girls they wear for marriage functions or any of these good occasions. So Dharmavaram silk sarees. No, we have got certain places. Now those particular places are unique. Similarly, in East Godavari near to us, we have got Uppada, right? So Uppada sarees are very popular. So they are confined to one geographic location, right? Now similarly, in case of the woolen industry, northern part of India, Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir, especially Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, so Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh are known for a particular industry, woolen industry. And similarly, they are also known for a particular industry called apple industry. So, such sort of, now these particular industries are not universal. These products are not manufactured everywhere and anywhere. These products are confined to only one particular region. And some of these particular products, they have demand only in one particular season. Woolen products will have demand only in the winter season. Summer season, you will not have a demand for that. Spring season, you will not have demand for that. Monsoon season, you will not have demand for that. So, they are confined to one particular geographic location or they are confined to one particular period, one particular time. So, such sort of industries we say as fragmented industries. The next industry is emerging industry. Industry which is still in the nascent stage is called as emerging. Nascent in the sense which is still in the beginning stage. So it is not at popular. People do not know about it, and people will only few people know about it, and it's still coming out. Such industries are called as emerging industries, right? So technologically driven industries, technological driven industries is called emerging. So today in the 20th century, in 2020, in this particular time, in this particular year and this particular time, 2020, artificial intelligence based industries are emerging industries, right? They are slowly coming out. People are still testing these products, the products of artificial intelligence. So tomorrow when artificial intelligence breaks through and then it is being introduced with a big bang, now that particular day it will not be an emerging industry, will be normal or popular industry. So today people are still trying. How, I mean, without any using this particular artificial intelligence, driving a cab, running a car, artificial intelligence based car, artificial intelligence based metro train, local metro trains, right? Okay, like this. So in the transport industry, we happen to find a breakthrough. In transport industry, we happen to see breakthrough of this artificial intelligence products, right? But still, they're not universal. In India, we don't have AI-based products. We don't have a Google car, or we do not have Google glasses. Now, this particular artificial intelligence based. Now, those particular products we don't have in India. They're yet to come. So they are confined to few places like Los Angeles. They are confined Europe. I mean, especially Japan. To these particular places only they're confined. Okay, so that such technologically driven industries as of today, we can say as emerging industry. The next industry is transition industry. That particular industry which has already been introduced, those particular products or those particular industry which are already been introduced, people already know about them, and people are slowly now trying to use them. People are making use of this particular application. In India, e-commerce is a transition industry. In the year 2010-2012, e-commerce was an emerging industry. Organizations like Flipkart, Amazon, which were into e-retailing back then in the year 2000, those particular industries were emerging industries. But today, this particular, uh, Amazon and I mean e-retailing or e-commerce is no longer an emerging industry. Now today it is called as a transition industry, right? People started accepting it. Now it has become popular not only in the metropolitan places, it has become popular even in the rural places, right? People living in Gollaprolu, people living in Pitapuram, people living in Chebrolu, they are also making orders, right? They are also placing orders on this particular e-retailing websites, and those orders are fulfilled, right? 8 years back in 2012 or 2010 in Flipkart, you say that I want a product to be delivered in Gollaprolu. They say our service is not available. We will not deliver the product in Gollaprolu because there is no service. Or Pitapuram, they say there is no service. But today, that's not the case. So you give your residential address, Gollaprolu based residential address, or if you are giving Uppada based residential address, the product will come and reach you at your home, at your doorstep. Because the industry has moved from emerging to transition industry, accepted. Now industry is being accepted and people are already using. And the next one, the fourth one is declining industry. Those particular products which are slowly becoming obsolete. OBSLETE, obsolete. Obsolete means outdated, right? So those particular industries which are becoming outdated or obsolete, which they come under declining industry. At one point of time, floppy disk was an declining industry. When way back in 2008, way back in 2007, the floppy industry was an obsolete. By the time we came to 2012, 2010, CD market started becoming declining industry because now CDs slowly start coming, and then in place of CDs, we started having this particular DVDs and all. By 2014, in a very short span of time, from 2012 to 2012 or 14, we started having Blu-ray disc. See, 2012 around that particular Blu-ray disc was introduced. Now prior to that, we had CD market. And by 2014, pen drives, they started becoming universal, right? So today, when we ask the current generation who are doing their graduation or intermediate or might be your batch or might be your sub juniors batch, you ask them about Blu-ray disc, not many of them know about Blu-ray disc. They'll say we heard about floppy drive, but we did not see that. We don't know how a floppy looks like, but we heard about it. We saw a CD. CDs are there still in our home. We saw a CD. Blu-ray we did not know, DVD we know, and we know about profit, right? So now when you are buying a laptop, you are buying a Dell laptop or Lenovo laptop or a HP laptop, you are no longer having a CD or DVD drive because people are not using it. So today's latest laptops that we are having, they don't have this particular. Now today, if you want a CD or DVD drive, it's no longer inbuilt. It comes in attachment. Exteriorly, you'll have to attach and then make use of that particular product. No, why it is happening? Because the CD industry, DVD industry, that particular industry has become declined. Those products have become obsolete. They are out of service. They are outdated. So the industry has slowly died. The next one is the global industry. That particular industry which is present all over the world. FMCG is a global industry, right? Similarly, soft drink market, soft drinks, global industry. Hot beverages, tea, coffee, and all global industry. So there are certain industries which are universal in nature. Such industries they come under global industry. So when we do the industry analysis, as an investor, you can invest your money in emerging, transition, and global. These three, I mean, we can make investments. Fragmented industry is not appealing. Generally, heavy investments will not flow into that. We don't find FDI coming into the fragmented industry. Similarly, nobody will invest money in declining industry, right? But the reverse happens. In place of investment, we find divestment. So divestment happens in declining, right? Zero investment in fragmented. We don't find any investments happening in fragmented. So investments or FDI, foreign direct investments, or normal investment as such, they flow into emerging industry, transition industry, and global industry. So that's all about our industry setting. Right. Next thing that we have is industry structure. Now, what is the base of industry structure? Here we have five types. One is pure monopoly. Single seller is called as pure monopoly market, right? Only in a country like North Korea, which is a pure socialistic market, and then we have a communist government, there we have monopoly. Rest of the world, we don't have monopoly. But there are very limited monopolies. For example, we had railways, we have monopoly, but this particular year, 2020, Government of India in the month of July invited bids for privatizing railways. They are allowing people like Tata, Birla, Reliance and all to run their own railways, to run their own trains. So private investment is coming here. Okay, but so far it has been a pure monopoly. Now in future, in the next generation, it will not be a monopoly. Next is pure oligopoly, where we have very few choices, not many people, very one or few companies. For example, petroleum industry, either Bharat Petroleum, HP Petroleum, or Indian Oil. No other choice. At the maximum, we will have Reliance or SR. So that's pure oligopoly. Right. Next is differentiated oligopoly. Right. Differentiated oligopoly. Say if all of them are selling only petrol and no other product, it's pure monopoly. Along with petrol, they are also selling diesel and kerosene, that it comes under differentiated oligopoly. Next is pure perfect competition. Right. Here, in case of this particular pure perfect competition, you will not find any difference. There might be 5 or 6 companies. It can be an oligopoly market or it can be monopolistic. It can be few sellers or it can be many sellers. Irrespective of that, product is 100% identical. All four of them manufacture the same product. Only by the name of the label you'll be able to differentiate. Product features, no differentiation at all. So pure perfect competition exists only in theory. Only in notebooks and textbooks we find pure perfect competition. But out in the market, we do not have pure perfect competition, does not exist. And the last one is monopolistic competition, where we have many sellers and many buyers, right? So monopolistic competition is very intense, cutthroat competition, and margins are very less margins, wafer thin margins. So from an industry analysis point of view, as an investor will be interested in differentiated oligopoly. He'll be interested in uh, uh, first three are good. Pure monopoly, you don't have any competitors is good. And similarly, differentiated oligopoly, that is also good. All right. Pure perfect competition does not exist at all. Monopolistic competition, only large and giant organization will enter into this particular industry. Right. So when we look at the monopolistic competition in the FMCG market, we have monopolistic competition. The recent players in FMCG are ITC is a recent player, and then Reliance is a recent player, because both of them are giant organizations. Small organizations will never enter into. All right, small organization, they enter into B2B businesses, and those particular generally B2B businesses come under either differentiated oligopoly or sometimes pure oligopoly. So let me stop this particular class here with industry structure. So tomorrow morning, when the first hour, when we return back, we shall discuss regarding industry attractiveness, performance, and practices. Thank you one and all for your patient hearing.